Hello, welcome to Cerulean Arts Gallery. Tonight we're speaking with Cathleen Cohen in conjunction with her Cerulean Collective Exhibition, which is on view now through December 8th. Hello, Kathy.
Hi, Mike.
Thanks for being here tonight.
My pleasure.
So I'm just going to spotlight Tina's video here and yours for a moment. So please tell us a bit about yourself and your current show.
Oh, sure. I went to the Pennsylvania Academy in the 90s and, studied like everybody else, all different media and, a lot of representational work. But I quickly just had a propensity for loving watercolor works on paper. That is my thing. That's what I love. And I write a lot of poetry, and that's a big part of my life too. So I feel a connection between poetry and painting. So whether painting abstractly or painting more representationally or something in between, um, I really like the lyrical movement and symbols and potential for narrative. All those things can exist in watercolor, of course. So yeah, I could talk a little bit about that, Mike, if you like.
Of course.
Okay. So definitely still lifes for sure. Um, Recently, I've taken some classes at Cerulean with a wonderful watercolor painter, Keith Leitner, and I've really enjoyed hearing his perspective. I studied at the Academy with Elizabeth Osborne and Homer Johnson, a wonderful watercolor painter, and Bruce Samuelson, Tony Rosati, Edith Neff was one of my mentors. Jan Baltzell was a big influence. I'm very interested in white space, so this always the space and what surrounds anything that might be an object or a focal point. So I so I write a lot about I write a lot of poetry, but I write about ekphrasis, which is the connection of more than one art form, but in this case, the connection of language and imagery. And so I'm often writing poems around the time that I'm painting. Now, this series on this wall are all plein air landscape painting. This one's Laurel Hill Cemetery from a course that Keith offered last year. Was wonderful to paint outdoors with other painters around and look at our work, a little bit like being in art school again after so many years. So I actually could read a poem if you like, because I write about what it's like to be a painter and sometimes about landscape painting. So I'm going to
Oh,
quickly,
sure.
sure. This
Yeah.
is one of my newer books. I have a bunch of like chapbooks and books. Um,
Yes, you've written several books.
yep, and often
Oh,
about being a
can you
painter.
hold it up again? Can you
Yeah,
hold it
sure.
up again?
This
Okay.
one's called
There it is.
Murmurations, and it's a recent chapbook. So here's a poem. Landscape with myself in it. I try to paint as taught to be impartial, to seek panorama. It's fine to circle a field before unpacking your paints, but don't chase an image. Light will change. Given times, forms contract or bleed into each other. Take this bird feeder, a slash of black pole signaling what? The neighbor's gossiping windows or rusted doors? I uncap ochre and burnt sienna, brush out light and dark tones, sketch the bones of this moment, shifting to mower drone, children swooping on bikes, cries from a basement that stir the air. They summon glints and shards, a figure emerging from spiky grass, which I don't obscure. So I like to do a lot of landscape painting. So
Yeah. Nice. Thank you.
you're welcome. Yeah.
So when you're painting in the landscape, it's very sort of like an intense moment because you will
Yes.
finish like in one sitting, correct?
Yes.
So I guess you have to be very like in the moment.
Very much so. It's lovely to kind of, people talk about being in a flow, where you sort of stop thinking about, what's around you except for what you're focused on. And it is very intensely in the moment, very meditative for sure. And I love the dance of light and color and yeah, I was trained as a dancer as a young person. That was in my family. My mom, my grandmother was a vaudeville performer. My mom was a dancer. All we kids studied dance for many years.
Wow.
And I relate that too to the quick movement of watercolor. Even if you're working with lots of glazes and layers, this first one on the left, there are more glazes and layers. In fact, this wall has more so because um, that wasn't done in plein air. That was probably done from imagination, done at home. I thought about it. I might have done a series of things. Often I'll do a series and then, because I don't change what I brush strokes that I put down on paper, which, watercolor, often it's you just trust the mark. You can control some things and not control others. But I
Yeah, once it's
probably did a
there,
bunch. Yeah. Yeah. I had
once it's
probably,
there, it's there. Hmm.
yeah, I probably put layers in some of those. Yeah, that one too. So I
So
have
the
a poem.
studio, oh, sorry.
Go ahead,
Uh,
Mike.
hang on, once Tina's camera's disappeared. Okay, here we go. Yeah, I was going to ask you about the still lives. So do you think of them differently than,
Yes. Yes. So there is some ability to, I mean, you're choosing views, of course, when you're out playing plein air, or if you do, but in this case, you can set something up, so you have that control. So there's some thoughtfulness beforehand. In my case, yes. So yeah, I would have set those up. And I'm interested in where the eye can move around a painting, the eye can enter, the eye can exit. And I do often have a window in some of these still lives. I'm really interested by multiple sources of light and having even that symbolic suggestion of a window is interesting for me. And I have a poem about still life. Would you like to hear it? And that's my
oh,
last.
yes.
Okay.
Uh-huh.
Okay. Inventory of a still life and of interior life, which is not still. An orchid in a pot, a red glass half filled, birds sculpted in plaster could be cupped in a hand. Not mine, which is busy with the scurry of a brush, placing colors, lifting covers off, all I've placed on a brash cloth. Is it too much? Have I pulled down a kite which settles for now, but might lift at the slightest breath? Maybe this featherless bird will jump, hover, and drink if my hand is fleet enough to handle paints, the brush, if my eyes widen enough to peer through the window. So here I talked about a window in the poem. Um,
It's nice. Thank you.
Thank you. And I'll say the painting on the right is dedicated to a dear friend, Tilda Mann, who passed away.
Oh,
And
yes.
was a member of Cerulean. So the
Hmm.
painting in that still life was from her. I purchased that and lived
Hmm.
with it for a couple of years, and then I sent it to her daughter Sarah, who I thought
Oh,
in Canada, who I thought might enjoy it. But I had done this painting of it. I'd forgotten that I'd done that. So when we were getting ready for this show, that was one that I would hope would be, hanging on the gallery. So
mhm.
it's very nice.
Yeah, we all miss Tilda.
Yeah. Here's
And then
another.
so then you sort your work moves from plein air to still life and then abstraction.
Yes, I did a lot of abstraction at the academy those last 2 years. And sometimes I'll do big ones, but lately more so more moderate sizes. I'm really interested in balance and mark making, and I'm sure I have my own symbols. And I know I do. I don't know why. Colors can be personally symbolic, but I do use those. So Now, the sum on this wall kind of the three in the middle for sure. I think that they straddle the boundary between representational and more abstract. So I am working from, would you believe the one in the middle is from still life, is from a landscape, and the two on its side are from still life. So
Huh.
they're little suggestions of things I might see in nature. Like there's a trunk of a tree in the center, actually, and some
Hmm.
windows from a neighbor's house. So I'm looking at shape and form and space in between and colors that might be adjacent and influence each other in different forms and movement. But I'm pretty soon it just takes over. I'm not necessarily recording everything I see, of course. So
Mhm. Right.
yeah. And it's fun to work that way. And then, compare these two still lives. The one on the left is
Right.
more representational, the one on the right, looser. But I am very intrigued to work in this kind of liminal space between representational and abstract.
And that's fairly new, yes?
But I've been doing that. I
Or
think, yeah.
like this, the one, these ones, I haven't seen anything like this before.
Ah, well, you'll be seeing more next time.
That, that's great.
Yeah. And also some ink. I know you use ink a lot in your work, Mike.
Yeah.
And yeah, I've
Hmm.
been I was experimenting with it in a very, different kind of loose way, but fascinating. And then some graphite and some a little bit of gouache. But I like watercolor. I love that white of the page. So
Yeah, it becomes part of the painting.
yeah, definitely it is important. So yeah. Yeah, and that's another still life from Keith's class. I really enjoy painting with other painters around.
Yeah,
You
it
know,
is nice to, I mean, most of the time we're isolated in
yeah,
our space, so it's nice to come together.
yes. And we learn from each other. Whoever's
Hmm.
presenting a workshop, we learn from them, but we learn from all of us. And it's lovely to be together, especially after those COVID years, early COVID years.
That's
We
right.
were
Yeah.
home, right? Yeah.
Hmm. And then this one's a bit different.
Yes, I was very lucky to go with my husband to Japan last year, and we did see Mount Fuji. So, and we did see like where the poet Basho wrote some of his beautiful haiku poems. So, I know it's like silly to try to paint Mount Fuji, but it's my own, interpretation. And I called it Hokusai's ghost, just the spirit of the poet and the painter there.
Did you paint it there?
No, I painted it when I got home, but I painted
Hmm.
lots of notes in a notebook.
Uh-huh.
I did quick sketches there, but we were quickly trying to see everything we could.
Yeah, right. Yeah, it's
Yeah,
kind of hectic when you're traveling.
yeah,
So, Kathy, in starting in January, you'll be teaching a painting
yeah,
and poetry course. Do you want
yes.
to say a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. It's all about this idea of ekphrasis, and it's a fancy word from Greek and Latin, which means to describe a work of art. But it really is about the connection and the alchemy that happens when one medium connects with another. And I really think writing a bit deepens what we're doing. So it could be someone who's never written any poems. I mean, and poems are all kinds of poems. It's not like when we were kids and we had to memorize Shakespeare. Poems, can sound like everybody speaks normally, but poems are beautiful art form and can you can say a lot with a short amount of words. So we're going to be doing painting, and I'll demonstrate watercolor techniques, and people can bring any media they like. It needn't be watercolor, drawing, acrylic, or whatever. But I there are lots of prompts and quick exercises where I can demonstrate, some really easy ways to write a bit about what you're doing, or, in different points of your process. So it might be an idea you have. You might write down a couple of phrases and then paint for a while and then stop and I ask some questions about what you're doing to you ask yourself questions. Or it could be something like writing a poem about another art piece. So we can go through the gallery and write a poem about a favorite painting you have. Someone might write about your work. You might write about your own later. Um, it's really, I think it's helped me deepen my inquiry. Like I learned a lot more about the topics I'm really after, and what are the symbols I'm using. And um, it just sometimes I do this a lot. So sometimes I'm painting and I'll go, I have some ideas, and I'll go jot down some ideas and take a break from staring at, your piece of art. It's
Mhm.
nice to have a break and think a little bit. And we all have ideas that come into our heads when we're writing, and I think it can be really interesting to explore that a little bit. So, Mike, I actually wrote a poem about you. Do you want me to read it?
Oh, okay. I'm
Okay,
flattered.
okay, it's right here. I'm working on it, Mike. So I'm taking Mike's wonderful class, and Mike is a very patient painter, and I am not, as you can see, but I'm really trying. So this is dedicated to you, Mike. He sets out a grid in the way of old masters, marks paper with half-inch squares, sweeps his hand along the ruler in a rhythm that might sweep a mind into quiet. I've tried, but once my grid is set, I erase the sudden cage. What stirs in me are wind-blown strokes, anxious branches, leaves that flex in morning, turn in all directions. There are times when the sky will pour bounty from its great inverted bowl, ringing riverbeds, trees bright as coins. Though not right now. My friend persists, inks grids with a sharp tipped pen, records waves, ovals, fissures. He stops at each square, each boundary. How long can he map this unknowing? Hours of losing himself as I swirl and swirl.
Wow, that's so nice. Thank you,
It's the
Kathy.
both of us.
Right, right.
As I was taking your class and watching, how wonderfully patient and layered. I have some lines that I might work into that poem about your many layers of knowing, because you build up your paintings over time, and it's showed me that my impulse is different. So, but I'm learning
Right.
from you. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean it's just a different point of view. Uh,
Yes.
but thank you.
I
That's
hope
really
you're okay that I read that poem. Well, that's,
Oh yeah.
it inspired me. So yeah,
Well, thanks again. I love it.
good. I'll type it up for you. Oh,
And we also love your show. It's a really wonderful show, Kathy.
thank you. Thank you.
And the show is up through December 8th. We hope people come down to check it out. And all the work is also available on our website, ceruleanarts.com. And you can actually learn more about Kathy's class and sign up for it on the website under the Studio tab. And thanks again, Kathy, for being here tonight.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Tina. Take good care.
You too.
Bye.
Bye-bye.